Hey everyone, it's Types, and today I'm going to be going over the Gholdengo EX deck, what is generally regarded, I think, as the top deck in the game. In terms of plays, it's first or maybe second. Let me see. In Limbless here, it's second, but it's pretty close. And then it's a deck that's very strong. It's kind of straightforward, but there are some nuances here that I'm going to be breaking down here today. This is a more competitive focused guide. Not that it can't be useful if you're not playing competitively. Normally, I don't make these kinds of videos. I'm not really a competitive player. I am actually, though, going to the Pittsburgh Regional Tournament, which, again, I normally don't do, but I'm going. And so I've been playing with Gholdengo, which is what I'm going to be playing for that. And this is actually my list you can see right here. Which I might be changing. I'll try to leave down below in the description or comments if I make any changes. Also, I'll try to remember to put this list in the description so you can play it if you want. It's nothing super crazy, but there are some options in the deck that I do want to talk about and say why I have them and why I don't and things like that. But ultimately, the deck is a very strong deck, but there are some things you need to watch out for in certain matchups here, which I'm going to be going over. A lot of it will be specific matchup stuff, but the general idea, if you're not familiar with Gholdengo EX, it's a stage 1 EX here, 260 HP, so kind of right in the middle of the basic and stage 2 EXs as you'd expect from a stage 1 here. And it's a metal type. For 1 metal, its attack, Make It Rain here, lets you discard any amount of basic energy cards from your hand, and then you do 50 damage for each card discarded in this way. So obviously you're doing a bunch of damage here, and it's pretty easy to power up. It's just one of those strong one-shotting decks, and probably the strongest. You also have Retrieval, which is kind of a similar idea there, doing big damage, trying to take one-shots. And then Gholdengo EX also has its ability Coin Bonus here, which, as the name suggests, is a bonus. It's not really, well, I don't know. It's a pretty important part of the draw engine of the deck. But it's not absurd draw. If your opponent doesn't Iono you, it's you can get a big hand, but you're drawing 1 card each turn for each Gholdengo you have, and 2 if it's in the active. So if you get a bunch of Gholdengos, you'll be drawing a bunch of cards, which is something you do want to try to do. But ultimately, it is still a bunch of resources you are putting into setting it up, and then you are getting decent draw. Help you out, specifically if you do get Iono as well. It's comparing it to the other draw engines in the game. It's not absurd. It's weaker than Drake, Loker, and Zoroark EX, but it is okay. Obviously, it's on your attack as well, so that's really nice, and it will help you if you're Iono'd, and can lead to a really big hand where you have a lot of options if you aren't there. That being said, you still want to definitely play Fezandipiti EX for a draw, which is very important. As your main draw piece, I guess. It's drawing almost as much as your Gholdengos, or maybe as much as your Gholdengos, and it's a 1 of basic there, so that's really important. Then on top of that, we do have Genesect EX, because the decks don't really play Evolution Search, or don't at all. This list doesn't. So Genesect EX is a basic here that searches out for 2 metal evolutions, I think. I don't think they need to be stage 1s, but they are. And puts them into your hand, and then you can use this ability every single turn of the game. I will say Gholdengo EX, or sorry, not Gholdengo, Genesect EX does have the highest retreat cost of anything in the deck, I guess. I mean, Gholdengo EX and Scizor also have 2 retreat costs, but you kind of want them in the active, and we'll talk about Scizor in just a second here, but Genesect EX can be a boss target for your opponent, or gust target, and this can be bad. It can get stuck in the active, so you really want to reserve air balloons for it. Additionally, your opponent can try to trap it in other ways where Air Balloon will not do what it needs to do. Then you have Professor Turo's scenario. I will mention right now that Switch is a card that I am considering adding to the deck. Not exactly sure what I would cut for it, so currently it's not in the list, but Genesect EX is something your opponent might try to trap, as well as Fezandipiti EX. Pretty much anything that's not Gholdengo, your opponent might try to trap. Probably not Scyther, because it has free retreat, but and it evolves into Scizor, which is an attacking option. But regardless, you do want to be careful of that. Additionally, you're trying to take knockouts, trying to take big one-shots. You're trying to take 2 prizes 3 turns in a row. There are some lists I'll talk about different deck builds, but ultimately, you're generally trying to take 2 prizes 3 turns in a row. If you have to take a single prizer, that's not really what you're looking to do. So it plays a bunch of Gust to get around it for boss, and a counter catcher, and also Iron Bundle here. And, those are just quite simply on the list to take 2 prizes every turn. And so you also want to avoid giving up 2 prizes every turn in those matchups where your opponent's going for a similar strategy. So do keep that in mind. Try to, attack with a single prizer if you can to get the 2 prizes, or also just generally you're trying to get 2 prizes, you're trying to not give up 2 prizes. That's a big thing that's happening in the game with certain decks, and we'll get into matchups in, again, just a second here. So I think that's about it for the list. I guess Energy Search Pro also very important to the deck, as like your first way to get a bunch of energy into your hand, assuming you don't have a bunch. Energy Search Pro in the late game, so even if you like draw a bunch of energy and you don't need Energy Search Pro, you could just like get Earthen Vessel. Energy Search Pro still might be like the way to go, because in the late game it's going to be probably kind of useless. Maybe not useless, but like not super good. So you could just use it. It's something you want to use to get your first knockout, and then you discard a bunch of energy, and then you use Superior Energy Retrieval to get the energy back. Also, sorry if my voice is a little rough right now. Not 100%. I'm not feeling 100%. But anyways, then yeah, that's about what you have going on there. Air Balloon also is a switch option, allowing you to draw more cards with Gholdengo EX, because you can retreat into a Gholdengo, to retreat from a Gholdengo into a Gholdengo to draw an extra card there. You do want to like save some Air Balloons in case your opponent tries to trap you, but you can definitely use some for draw as well. And they're very searchable off of Arven in the list here. I guess one last thing that I'm not really going to talk about in the matchup section of things. Ciphermaniac's Codebreaking is a card that is really useful for putting 2 cards on top of your deck, is what it does, and so you can draw them with Gholdengo, which is useful. That being said, it's also very useful if you're worried about your opponent playing Iono, so you can guarantee have a certain card on top of your deck for next turn, or 2 cards. You can also put 2 cards on top, draw one of them using Gholdengo EX on your bench, and then you can also go ahead and save one for next turn in case your opponent Ionos you or doesn't Iono you, right? You'd still draw them regardless. Also, the card on top, if you don't draw it on, if you don't draw any immediately this turn, you will draw the card on top next turn. You can probably get the one below it, but just be a little careful of that and make sure you don't like shuffle and stuff like that. Ciphermaniac's Codebreaking is good. It's not like absurd in the deck, but it's pretty good. Then moving on to the matchups here. So Gholdengo EX has generally it's a very good deck, right? Look at its win rate here. It's not absurd, but it's good. Looking at the mirror, ultimately you're looking to you're not looking to do anything super crazy. I do have a list pulled up. This is like the quote average list. But you're just trying to take one shots, right? And then on 2 prizes. But then looking at Dragapult is the other of the most popular decks in format. So against Dragapult Dusknoir, in this matchup, your opponent obviously has spread options. Dragapult EX is a deck that's going to be hitting your bench here. The first thing they'll be doing is hitting you with Badoo. Make sure you get your Genesect EX up, and some Gimmighouls theoretically going second could be useful to allow you to Arven before your opponent really has the option to start doing start Badooing you, right? You can play your Arven, and then you can play your Buddy-Buddy Poffin. If you go first, then your opponent will Badoo you turn 1, and then you can play your Arven, but you can't play the Buddy-Buddy Poffin. But regardless, here you're going to be trying to generally just take knockouts on 2 prizes. That's your general idea. You're not always going to be able to do it. You will have to probably knock out Badoo at some point. I will mention, I don't play Munkidori in my list. I don't think it's super useful. I will kind of, if you... Munkidori could be good for healing, right? But ultimately, it's not really useful for the damage, because in terms of the actual amount of damage you're doing, you're actually doing less when you're attached to Munkidori, because you could just discard the energy to do 50 instead of 30. So in terms of doing damage, Munkidori is bad. And then in terms of healing, it's okay. I do play Picnic Basket, though, which I like a little more. It heals 30 from all Pokemon in the game, including your opponents, which is actually good to heal your opponent's Pokemon, because... are generally good, because you're aiming for one-shots. So generally, the only reason your opponent would have damage on their board is if they're, putting it on their board, which case they kind of want it on their board. So I will acknowledge that it can be bad at times, but pretty rarely. Generally, it's good or neutral. And then it heals 30 from all your Pokemon, so Munkidori is going to be healing up to 30 from 1. Munkidori could do it over multiple turns. But generally, you're not having a ton of extra turns, and if you do have a ton of extra turns, your opponent probably also has Munkidori and is trying to do the same thing you're doing, but they're going to be able to do it better, because they're really designed around it, especially if you're looking at Marnie's. Then if you are buying a bunch of turns, or if, a bunch of turns are being bought presumably by your opponent, and Munkidori kind of helps you, but they're going to help your opponent more, so it's not where you want to be. Regardless, your opponent will be sprinkling damage around your board as they're kind of attacking. Dragapult here will be a slower deck. They're trying to set up a longer game. Also, I am looking at just an example list here. Gimmighoul is the card that you do want to be watching out for in terms of the end game here, because Dragon Ball will be sprinkling damage across your board. Also, Dusknoir, Hawlucha, potentially Munkidori. Again, I would not hit into them to not take the knockout, because that gives them extra damage to work with Munkidori, and also they can buy turns to heal off a lot of that damage, potentially, depending on the situation there. So I just go for knockouts here. Again, you will probably need to knock out Badoos, unfortunately, at some point. You probably take 2 single prize knockouts and 2 prize knockouts. Again, if you take 3 2 prize knockouts, that's better. You might have to take more than 2 single prize knockouts. That's not so good, but you might not really have control over that. You obviously want to get your board set up with the Gholdengo EXs to draw you a bunch of cards. This isn't my list, but here it is. You want to draw a bunch of cards to the Gholdengo. You want to hopefully hit your boss. Boss is like super important, and so that's what you're going for. But the most important thing here is going to be the end game. You're probably going to start the game with a lead here, and your opponent will not really be able to, they're not going to be able to trade evenly with you at the beginning of the game. So you'll start with a lead, then they're going to probably countercatch or boss you. And when I say boss, they're going to be bossing probably the Genesect. And then they're going to boss it, and then they are going to jamming tower you. And now we can't air balloon. So this is kind of sketchy. This is why Switch could be good in the list. Professor Tur's scenario is useful as well in this matchup, because your opponent's going to be sprinkling damage around and trying to go for like a potentially a 6 prize turn here. And then Turo Scenario is going to like really shut that down. That being said, Turo Scenario isn't really searchable. It's searchable off of Ciphermaniac's Codebreaking, so you could go for that. Throughout the course of the game, you will have a bunch of turns. You might have turns off. If you don't have turns off, you're probably winning. And then if you do have those turns off, you might be able to Ciphermaniac's Codebreaking for the Turos, which is going to be guaranteed for you to get, whether your opponent Ionos you or doesn't Iono you. So I do acknowledge that. Ciphermaniac's Codebreaking, a third one, could be useful for that reason, but anyways, do be aware of that. Kind of save your Levincias as well. Levincia is obviously a stadium that's useful to bump jamming tower, though again, it's also not searchable. And then, yeah, pretty much you just need to be able to switch at that last turn, and just hopefully a win there. It's going to come down to the end game. Don't overextend, but I've heard some people say you want to be super passive, and if you just be super passive, your opponent will be able to set up more. So I would encourage like forcing your opponent to make plays and have things, because they are playing Draco, kind of like Gholdengo EX. It's going to grow their hand, but Draco looks better than Gholdengo EX in terms of draw. So, yeah, they will be able to kind of get going, get more value from getting going. So you do want to apply some pressure here. Looking at Dragapult, the version without Dusknoir. Sometimes it like does play Dusknoir. I don't know. There's like some in between nature here, but notably the card you want to be watching out for here is going to be Maractus. Maractus is a very scary card for the deck, in my opinion, especially because I cut down to 1 Turos. It originally had 2. But this is going to be use the attack corner here, which is going to stop you from retreating, and that's bad, because then you can't get out of the active. So make sure you have Turo, right? That's the thing you're trying to do, which you can like kind of do. You can't always do. Again, there's the Ciphermaniac's Codebreaking thing. If it's already in your hand, you can't do that. You try not to bench Genesect. You can only have attacks in play. Likelihood that that's going to work is pretty low, right? But you could try to do that here, and they do hit you for resistance. You'll never be able to retreat or get knocked out. Not that it'll really matter. Presumably they'll like build up enough damage to then be able to win the game with the 1 attack, but maybe not, because they're not playing Dusknoir. Regardless, yeah, Maractus, something to watch out for. Ultimately, just kind of have the Turo. That's the best way around it. The Switch would be a good tech as well. As I said, I'm still considering it. And then, it's Dragapult they'll be, but doing in the early game, again, they have Munkidoris, so don't just randomly hit into them. That's not so good here. Yeah, but that's about all there is to the matchup there, I think. I'm sure there's some like specific details I'm missing, so if you do have any questions, ask them down below in the comments. But yeah, Dragapult is definitely, I'd say, a difficult matchup in terms of there's a lot of things to think about. It's one of the most complicated matchups, but it is like kind of cool as well there. And then looking at the Gardevoir matchup, Gardevoir EX here is a deck that is going to be playing a bunch of Munkidoris and then like spreading damage around your board. A lot of the times they play TM Devolution. TM Devolution is definitely a card I'd watch out for. Jellicent EX could be bad because it item locks you, but you can boss around it. Frillish also item locks you, but it's not like really doing that much damage. So if you have options, like if you have much going on, you should be all right there. And then yeah, pretty much you're trying to you're trying to take two prizes every turn, as I said. You're not going to do that. I will say I do run Tool Scrapper. Tool Scrapper might get cut. Tool Scrapper is useful for this matchup to knock out Drifloon as well as other things potentially, but you can knock out their Drifloon with Tool Scrapper, which is kind of cool here. But mainly the thing you're trying to do is just go ahead and take the two prizers, and then also if your opponent decides to go for Team Devolution, you want to be careful. Oh, I didn't mention Picnic Basket. Picnic Basket is really important against Dragapult because they're trying to spread damage. And then it's also useful against Gardevoir, where they're setting up Team Devolution. I guess while I'm here, I'll talk about Marnie's as well. Marnie's is a deck where you're trying to, they're trying to set up damage. You're trying to take two prizes every turn. You're not going to take two prizes every turn. They often play Maractus, so be wary of Maractus. And they play Team Devolution. So if your opponent has Team Devolution, you want to just make sure you heal off. Additionally, here, your opponent's going to be damaging you using Frostlass and Munkidori. You can't do too much about the Munkidori damage. They'll be pretty consistently doing that. However, the Frostlass damage, you can just, like, don't play 4 Gholdengos. 4 Gholdengos are good for draw, but your opponent can then just board wipe you out of all your Gholdengos, so kind of hold back there. You can play more Gimmighouls. Gimmighouls will be, like, a little vulnerable, but they're not taking damage over the course of the game, so the same way that the Gholdengos are from Frostlass, so do be aware of that. Frostlass also is a nice Pokemon to target, because not only does it reduce the damage you're taking from Frostlass, it reduces the damage you're taking from Munkidori, as in, like, completely nullifies it. So that can be pretty good to go for as well. But then in Gardevoir, and in both these matchups, Picnic Basket is useful for healing, as well as Professor Turo's Scenario. Professor Turo's Scenario can be sketchy because you can get stuck. Second Copy could be useful. I definitely would not hate that, but ultimately, it's you just need to play around the Team Devolution. If you do that, you should be okay, as well as getting trapped. That's like the general things you're kind of scared of. Spread and pretty much like the alternate like win conditions, they can be kind of scary for you because in terms of regular win conditions, you're really, really good. Also, I will mention Tool Scrapper here. The reason it's in the deck, it's there, as I said, for Gardevoir, knocking off the Bravery Charm, but it's also there for, it can be useful in the mirror. Your opponent's playing Air Balloon on their Gholdengo, so you can reduce their draw power, but also it can be useful to get rid of the tool off of a Genesect, not the EX, but the single prizer, which will stop you from playing Energy Search Pro. I have not actually done that in the game, but looking online, I saw people saying that. I don't know how good Tool Scrapper is. I mostly put it because, I don't know, like it can be really useful against Gardevoir. Gardevoir, honestly, is kind of scary, kind of like Dragapult, where your opponent is kind of going for alternate win conditions, but a lot of the time you should be okay there. Then we got ourselves a Raging Bolt here. Raging Bolt is a matchup which is going to be this one's like kind of even. This one, what you're trying to look to do is go ahead and attack with the Scizor. Scizor is really good because your opponent has like their HP is like kind of low. They're gonna presumably have a lot of Pokemon to play with abilities. They got Fanrotom, Ogerpon, Fezandipiti or Squawkabilly or Noctowls or Latias. They're going to have a bunch of these Pokemon. You can be pretty constantly one-shotting them with Scizor. Force them to gust around you, which they can't really do super well. They can do it once with Prime Catcher, and then they can do it with Boss's Orders, but also with Boss's Orders, they are going to, need to like get the energy on their board as well, which they probably can't do unless they like somehow set it up, which is pretty unlikely there because they're also needing to knock out a 2-prizer. So just use Scizor. That's going to be the main way that you win this matchup. Not that it's like terrible without it. It's kind of meh. Whoever again, you're kind of similar to actually trying to take 2 prizes every turn. So just kind of go with Scizor. It's pretty good there. Get the Scyther. Scyther also, I didn't say, it's not really a liability in play. It does take up a bench slot. That's partially why I don't love Munkidori. Bench space is like, it's fine, but it would be tight if you added something else in there. But then the Scizor here is a liability. It can get stuck. It isn't always a good attack option. Scyther, though, it has free retreat, so that's really good. And then that matchup's pretty simple and straightforward though. And then we got ourselves a couple more here. Got Charizard here. Charizard is a bit of a sketchier matchup because of one card. Well, it's not necessarily. It's the fire stuff, right? And I guess while I'm here, I'll talk about Flareon, and I guess I'll mention Ethan's. Wait, where's Ethan's? I don't know. I've lost it. It's right here. Yeah, Ethan's is going to be your worst matchup. There isn't really anything, as far as I'm aware, you can do about the Ethan's matchup. That the Ethan's card's loaded. Okay, they'll just be one-shotting you. There's nothing you can do, as far as I'm aware. The single prize attacking options don't get there. The multi-prizers are just gonna get one-shotted, so you're like gonna lose. But then in Flareon here, this matchup you're trying to take 2 prizes a bunch of turns. They do a Briar, so you can't really go for anything fancy, trying to mess with their prize race too much or their prize mapping too much. You could try. It probably won't work. You could theoretically target down their EVs where they couldn't set up. That's like pretty bad, right? Ultimately, this matchup's going to be kind of rough because they're one-shotting you with relative ease, and you need to put more effort in, and they're more versatile. So the main way you win, realistically, is if they don't really set up very well. But it's definitely going to be a pretty rough matchup for you there. Charizard here is like a matchup where your opponent will have the Chew mainly as an option against you, but you still want to be going for knockouts on like their 2 prizers. The 2 prizes are presumably going to be in play. I imagine they're powering up Chiyu using Charizard EX there. They got Pidgeot EX in play, so you can just kind of target those down. Specifically, Pidgeot, it has less HP than Charizard, because if you need to go after 3 Charizards, you're probably not doing that, because of the amount of HP they have. And then also they, the Pidgeot is like a really nice target to go after there. So go after that if you can. This matchup's a little sketchy, but it is winnable, and it's also relatively straightforward. The last matchup here is a Joltik box I'm going to be going over. I guess I'll go over the mirror real quick as well, but Joltik box is, in my opinion, kind of sketchy because they're going to be sending a Pikachu EX pretty consistently, or Iron Hands, theoretically. I don't think they'll be doing that, though. They'll probably be doing Pikachu EX. That's what you're scared of. And notably, it's one-shotting you, and also it's a card that you cannot one-shot, right? You cannot one-shot it no matter what you do, so you need to go around it. And then you still have the Pikachu EX, so they might still have energy on it, just keep swinging at you, and then, yeah, you got to keep going around it every turn. It's pretty sketchy, but it is what you kind of have to do here. They don't really have disruption, so just kind of go, draw lots of cards. Oh, they do have Genesect as well, so the Tool Scrapper can be useful here, but yeah, Pikachu EX is pretty annoying for you. They also Blood Mirror Saluna EX to like take the. Oh no, sorry, that does not get the knockout. Yeah, so they'll just have Pikachu swinging, and that's about it. You need to kind of hope that they stall out, but they don't stall out that consistently. Also, I will mention the Gholdengo Joltik deck. Together, that's going to be even sketchier. I just think that's a better version of the Pikachu Joltik box deck. Pairing it with the Gholdengo EX there, so that's going to give it more consistency and stuff. So again, you're still looking for those 2 price knockouts, though. You are going first here because your opponent's going to be jolting charging, I guess. Third one there. And then lastly, in the mirror matchup, and here is also like the general list here. The only differences are, I talked about Munkidori. Single prize Gholdengo does have some value. It's easier to slot into the deck, but generally weaker than Scizor. And then I think that's the only major difference. Ciphermaniac's Codebreaking, I kind of talked about it. Another copy is cool, but I do like other cards over it. And then it doesn't help you set up in the early game either. But then in the mirror matchup, you're trying to take 2 prizes every turn. But more importantly, trying to not give up 2 prizes. So you want to have a board where, so starting like a 2 prizer is bad. You want to start a single prizer, kind of wait around. Theoretically, you can take knockouts with a Scizor, but like probably not. You need like multiple energies, so that's kind of sketchy. But you might want to go for that. Gholdengo will be useful in the mirror, the single prizer. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is take 2 prizes. Make sure you don't give up 2 prizes, though. This is also true in the Raging Bolt matchup, but generally, I feel like you have less control over it. And the single prizers, like Grand Rotom's kind of meh. It requires a little bit of setup. And then on top of that, also, also I didn't mention this. You could Iono Raging Bolt. That can be good. But Iono's kind of sketchy in the deck because it's a card that in the late game is probably not going to allow you to actually attack. You're going to be Ioning yourself from a big hand to a small hand. In the early game, though, it's kind of useful there as like another draw supporter. But ultimately, in the mirror, you want to make sure you don't give up 2 prizes, and then you can get a single prize knocked out. Then you can just Fezandipiti, take a 2 prize knockout every turn for the rest of the game pretty easily there. Overall, though, the list, I've been pretty happy with my list. I will mention Togekiss is okay, I guess, but it's like kind of situational. It's a pretty big commitment as well, and I just don't like it. I'm not gonna lie. Other options here, nothing really seems crazy that I don't play. There are some more healing options. as well, and different options, but nothing super crazy. Again, the card I am considering is Switch. I guess Rigid Band's also okay, but Switch is a pretty good card here as a consideration. But I do kind of like where the list is at, or I do like it quite a bit. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff. And as Osmond said, see you in the next video.